Hey y'all, we're back with another Confrontation of Calling, the conversation. I know it's been a while since our last conversation, but hopefully that gives you some time to go back and to look at the previous conversations we've had. I'm so excited for today's guest who actually just joined us. But hey, CLEE, you could, I guess, request to go live. I'm also going to give it a couple minutes so that people have an opportunity to join too. But yeah, if you haven't had an opportunity to see the previous conversations, be sure to do that. Yeah, so I'll bring on my guest today. I'm so excited for him to be on. He's an amazing person, so let me do this live thing. Okay. On. And I think he's coming up. So yeah, as he's joining, if you didn't have an opportunity, that's what I was saying before. If you didn't have an opportunity to see those lives before, definitely go back. It's on my page. It's saved. Absolutely see those discussions. They have been really impactful. Hey, CLEE,
Hey,
how are you?
how's it going? You can hear and see me clearly?
Yes, I can. And let me turn up my volume as well. Okay. Yes, I can hear you. I can see you. We're all
Cool,
good. How,
cool.
how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I played like a good amount of pickup basketball yesterday for the
Oh,
first
nice.
time in a while, so my body's like,
No,
but
get me to bed immediately.
yeah, I
Well,
woke up this morning like, whoa. So I'm doing good.
well, thank you for pushing through it and coming on this live.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Definitely wouldn't miss it. Wouldn't miss it.
I appreciate you. So, you're actually my first male guest, so
Oh, okay.
thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining. Um, I'm trying to do better about being giving equal opportunity, but whoever comes on. But thank you. So you're the first. So I give you a clap, a round of applause.
I'm glad to be the first, man.
So yeah, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Diane Reed. I am the creator and the CEO of the brand, The Confrontation of Calling. Um, I am passionate about helping people contend, confront, and confirm their calling so that they can thrive unapologetically. And I created these conversations, the confrontation of calling, the conversation, so that we can just have an honest, authentic discussion about what it looks like when you're accepting your calling and kind of all the things that come with that. I think a lot of us are going through many transitions, and I've found that in conversations that I've had with other people, um, we're all kind of going through the same thing. So why are we not talking about it? Why are we not learning from each other's mistakes? Why are we not learning from each other's successes? So I just wanted to create a transparent space for us to discuss that. And I think CLEE is an amazing human being, one first and foremost. And I think we can learn so much from his story. And thank you so much, CLEE, for officially coming on.
Yeah, glad to be here. And I'm excited. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say, like, but we'll see where this goes. So,
Absolutely. So before we jump into it, I do want my audience to know you. So I have your bio here. So CLEE the Visionary is the founder and CVO of Build Your Vision LLC, a media and coaching company that trains impact-focused visionaries in self-leadership and podcast creation. His mission is to eradicate internal confusion in his generation and build the vision economy. And that is a balanced supply and demand ecosystem in which each individual's accomplished vision is the platform for another vision to be actualized. Cleavon believes that there's a broken link in the supply chain, leaving the world with many dreamers but very few visionaries. And he wants to partner with you to fix it. So Cleavon has an amazing brand, has an amazing podcast and a podcasting company. Is there anything else you want my audience to know about you, or anything else?
Maybe just that I do maybe need to update that bio a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
it's interwoven inside of it. The reason why I am working to eradicate internal confusion and why I do content creation training, podcast training, and things like that with my company is because I feel like that missing link from dreamer to visionary is clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And this is perfect conversation to be having, on this. But I noticed that through my journey and the things I've experienced, creating content, doing a podcast was a key piece of me getting that clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than kind of just trying to think through the clarity, I was creating through it.
Yeah.
So maybe I should integrate that in there somewhere, but I haven't figured out the language yet to put it in the
I
bio.
mean, you said it. It works. So go back to the recording, write it down, because I that was very clear, and I think that's a key point. I think we have to have it all together before we actually do something, but it's actually through the doing that you become more clear, and you become more comfortable in your gifts and your talents,
Yeah.
and you kind of discover yourself as you're doing. So that's a key point. So yeah, definitely add that to the bio somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, how I always like to start these conversations is just for you to describe a situation or a scenario where you felt like you were confronted with a version of yourself that you never really imagined yourself being, and all the emotions and all of that that came with it. And we'll start we'll start from there, and then we'll continue our conversation.
Yeah. We'll start in the 10-foot section of the pool when I'm here. Um, no, that's a really great question. Um, and when I was thinking about it, like I said, I was like, I'm not exactly sure what's going to come out, but
Yeah.
for sure, during the pandemic, I think this is a common experience for a lot of people. During the pandemic, you had a lot of time to sit with yourself
Mm-hmm.
because of the isolation policies and things that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think around that time, I was pretty fresh out of school. I graduated like a year before. And I was like, okay, I'm an adult. Like,
Yep.
I have to have a career, and I was working and things like that. And we were considered essential workers, so didn't get to stay home. But like, I really had to ask that question, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And during this period is when I started making TikToks, where I guess kind of the brand really began. I had a brand before because I started podcasting when I was in school,
Mm.
uh, but I started transitioning into a more well-known brand. And I think at that point I was like, okay, if I keep doing the same stuff, I'm going to stay in the same place. So I got to start doing some different things. So I think at that point I was like, all right, well, what was the old version of me doing? And I think the old version of me, I haven't really articulated this before, but like I was good at kind of doing everything,
Mhm.
being cool with everybody.
Mhm.
I have the type of personality that is able to kind of just go to different groups of people and just kind of gel with all of them.
Mhm.
Um, and becoming a person that became more easily it became more easy to dislike
Mhm.
was tough, because you had to make decisions like I thought we were cool. Now that I'm trying to better myself, now things are it's a problem. So
Mhm.
like having to navigate those types of relationships, seeing where they actually were. I started reading like books like Relational Intelligence and
Mhm.
things like that. But I think that was the moment where I was like, yeah, you can't make everyone happy if you're going to pursue where you feel called to what you feel called to do in life. And that was definitely like a revelation.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And as I've had more conversations with people, this kind of relational shift that kind of takes place
Hmm.
as a result of you kind of finding and discovering who you are, who you've been created to be. It always comes up, and you kind of moved along to the conversation. So, what was your experience? What were the kind of types of conversations you had to have with those people? Or was it more of just like, oh, I'm gonna do my own thing and people just fell off naturally, or a combination of both?
Um, some of them had to be very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were the latter, where they kind of just fell off intentionally.
Yeah.
The ones that were the closest for sure,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, I'm going this way. If you're not going this way,
Yeah.
it's probably not going to work, or we're
Yeah.
going to change the dynamic. And those are very, very hard,
Mm-hmm.
very hard. Like I said, I wasn't used to not being liked. Um, and and I think at that point I realized how important admiration was to me.
Mm-hmm.
That I like being a person that people kind of not necessarily looked up to, because it was like lateral, it was horizontal, but someone that people like to be around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you're not that, you kind of have to deal with all the emotions of like, oh, and then some of them, yeah, were just natural. It's like, well, I'm not showing up in this place as much anymore. I'm not doing that as much anymore. And that's kind of when you start to learn about how where your relationships actually stand. And
Mm-hmm.
this is like not a negative thing. It's just the reality. Some people you have close bonds with through proximity. And then some people you have close bonds with through compatibility.
Yeah.
So like when you remove the proximity, the
Mm-hmm.
relationship is null and void. Like so and having to deal with that, I was like, oh wow, like don't have as much in common as I thought,
Mm-hmm.
type of, yep.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because I was pretty similar too. I liked being a person who was being liked, like a person who can get along with almost anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I realized is that I really didn't have deep relationships with those people. It was just, like you said, proximity. And for the people I was really close with, that those are where those intentional conversations had to happen in order for those shifts to take place. And I think for me, I had to really do some self-reflection of just like, wow, who's the person that I want to be, and what are some self-perceptions that I kind of have to let go. Like I can't be this person who's liked by everyone,
Yeah.
because you're not doing something right if you have no if you're like by everyone.
Right.
It's like, are you really making an impact in the world? Because what you should be solving, what you should be who you should be influencing, who you should be impacting, should cause some feathers to get ruffled. It should cause some tension, not purposefully, but it's just the nature of being a solutionist. So I had to let go of like who I wanted to be also as I was accepting this calling. And it sounds like what you're saying is that you also had to let go of this idea of being someone who was liked and someone who got along with everyone. So how did you kind of go through that own self reflection and self awareness so that you can transition into this new person?
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. I mean, even Jesus had enemies and he was perfect. So I stand
Exactly.
I don't stand a chance. Like, uh, but yeah, navigating it. Ooh, there's probably phases of navigating it. And I will not say probably some of them weren't the healthiest, to be quite honest. There's it doesn't take much for me to get a chip on my shoulder.
Mhm.
So I think that may just come from, playing athletics growing up and competitive spirit, where it's like, oh, got a knock on me. Now I'm about to turn up. type of situation. Like, I'm going to prove to you that I'm not crazy, that I'm not, I don't think I'm better than you, but because you think that, now I'm about, you know what I'm saying? Like stuff that's like probably not the most Christ-like, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And there was a phase, and it was a weird convergence of time, because I kind of didn't help the situation, because like I said, I started making content. I think that was part of like, because of the isolation and me not having many people. I grew up, I have a half brother, but we grew up in different households. So I was the only child in my house. So when I was little, I used to do all kinds of stuff by myself. I played full on basketball against myself. I would play like football with like stuffed animals and action figures by myself, make videos like the JVC cameras,
Hmm.
whole movies by myself.
Wow.
So I kind of like went back into that like isolation place where I was like in my creative head, and I did it on TikTok because no one knew who I was on
Mm-hmm.
TikTok. TikTok was a relatively newer platform at the time, so like no one knows me on here. I could do whatever I
Yeah.
want. Um, and that started to take off, and so I knew I had this new form of affirmation, um, and I really leaned into that. And you know how it goes with social media. When you lean into what's working, it starts working even faster, and blah blah blah. And that kind of, we can get here later,
Mm-hmm.
but that kind of another phase of separating yourself for a calling. But
Yeah.
so I think there was that phase where it's just like, I'm just gonna grind, I'm gonna work hard, blah blah blah. I'm gonna show that like, y'all think I'm up in the clouds. I'm not up in the clouds. Like, I'm really serious about what I'm trying to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of get to a point where stuff's going slower than you thought it would. And you have to realize you're not in control. You don't make the rain fall on the crops or the
Mm-hmm.
snow on the earth.
Ouch. Yep.
Yeah. And it's not because things aren't working. It's either working for you or it's working on you, right? Um, but I don't know, at least for me spiritually, I came to like the realization of like, if you keep going like this, you're going to flame out bad, hard, or you're going to create a whole entire life that you actually don't even want.
Yeah.
So, I think when I came to that point, and this might have been happening maybe around 2022
Mm-hmm.
by this time, I really started to lean into my personal growth, my personal spiritual growth. I started um, doing like Bible studies, and I've always been a big journaler. I started journaling in 2016, and haven't stopped since. So like doing a lot of self-reflection through that, and investing in my professional growth, investing in my spiritual growth. I took like a course called Everyday Seminary, so like I
Mm-hmm.
could read the Bible better
Yeah.
and things like that. And at this point, people started thinking I was going to become a pastor. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to know my Bible, like, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, going through those different phases, and I think now I'm more of in a phase of like, I'm pretty clear on what the direction of the calling. I have no idea what it's actually going to look
Yeah.
like, but the direction of the calling is, and I'm more comfortable and confident in that skin, because I gave up the outcome.
Yeah.
At first it was like the vision board was like real lit. It was like, this we
It's right.
manifesting out here.
Yep.
And now it's like looser goals. It's like, Lord, if you want that to happen, great. If you don't, I'm going to worship you just the same.
Yeah.
So I think that it was kind of a progression,
Yeah.
of that humility, but that's kind of how I worked through it. Yeah.
No, that's so good. And you said so much. So let me backtrack and let's take it apart a little bit. So you spoke about how the separation from kind of your friend group at the time put you in a place where you were uh, isolated Yeah, we were all isolated because of quarantine, but you were also kind of not around the same people. You didn't have as many people around you, and you kind of put yourself into creating um, kind of the default habit that you were used to growing up,
Yeah.
creating, being by yourself, and you saw progress there, and it's like, okay, I'm making this work. I'm putting in the work, it's following through, and then things started to slow down. So it's like, wait, am I really in control of the results that I'm getting, or is this God allowing me to have this platform, have this audience? And
Right.
um
Well, things didn't
more
actually start to slow down. I started to slow down.
oh, you started to slow down.
Yeah,
See?
yeah. I feel
Okay,
like
so
I
good.
probably could have triple X if I continued, but I was just like, it really got to a point where I was just like, why am I doing this? You
Hmm.
know, and that's when things started to like really slow down, and I had to grapple with that too, because you have FOMO, like you
Yeah.
have like, oh, what if I just went that way and I could have pivoted later and I could have, got more recognition or whatever and then made the pivot or whatever. And you deal with all those types of things. But I know like no mistakes were made. I don't regret anything. Um, but yeah, it wasn't so much that like things stopped working. Things were going great,
Hmm.
but it stopped working internally for me. The wound was still the balm of whatever that was wasn't healing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good clarification point. So it was more so you internally still not receiving the satisfaction that you thought would have came from getting that affirmation from social media and seeing those results and seeing your goals actualized. So
Hmm.
what happens when you reach the goals that you set for yourself and it's still not satisfying? And
Hmm.
you said that took you to personal and spiritual discovery and development, which I think is so necessary because when we talk about calling, it's really important that we talk about identity, because your identity actually fuels your calling. Your calling is not your identity.
Right.
It's because of who you are in Christ that you are even able to do the things that um, God has called you to do. And when you're separate from who you are, being comfortable in who you are, you start to burn out if you don't
Hmm.
have the correct goal in mind, if you don't have the correct vision in place.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of that journey as you were discovering kind of your identity in Christ and building your biblical intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Um, how did you start changing as a result?
Yeah. Uh, um, why am I blanking right now? Miles Monroe he said something that really hit me. He was like, you want to know the best way to remain humble? Stay in your lane.
Mm.
And I was like, what? What does that what does that mean? And he was just like, when you stay in your lane, your excellence comes so naturally to you that you don't have room to become big headed. You're just like, I'm not even really doing that much. This is just, and people are like, oh, you're amazing, blah, blah, blah. You're like, I'm not, but when you are move outside your lane and you gotta grind, you gotta hustle, you gotta every little bit, you're gonna like, I'm gonna make sure everybody knows how hard I work for this. That's when you really get to a point where you are prideful, and things like that. So me realizing like kind of like what my lane is. What do I want to be known for? Where do I feel the most authentically at in flow? And I mean that both spiritually and professionally or career wise. Um, and of course, yeah, I was doing lots of like discovery work, all types of spiritual gifts assessments, getting community with other people, and realizing like what my gifts are and like, oh wow, I've always done that, but I've never leaned into it because I just didn't know that that was a thing. uh,
Yeah.
and all those different types of things. So it was a lot of little just affirmation moments, like, oh, that's why I do that. Oh, that's how that could be useful. Oh, that's not necessarily a negative thing if I keep it in a healthy place. Like all these different things
Mhm.
of me kind of understanding, just like you said, my identity,
Yeah.
and valuing the person that God created me to be, and not thinking that the things that set me apart in a positive way were actually things that were damaging my life.
Mhm.
Like me having, it was weird, like doing spiritual gifts assessments, and I'll have like a prophetic gift in there, like little tucked away. I'm like,
Mhm.
I know, no. But then when I found out that you can be prophetic in multiple areas or multiple different ways, like for me, it's prophetic observations or questions. So I can see like way down the line a question to ask someone because I could see something that most people can't see.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that I'm making any type of proclamation or anything like
Mhm.
that. But that used to bother people. Like the wrong, if I would do it with the wrong people,
Yeah.
like they'd be like, "Bro, can't you just leave it alone? Why do you always seeing around the corner? Like, just chill. Like, stop it." And
Mhm.
I usually be like, "Man, maybe I am doing too much," like things like that. But me understanding, oh no, 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 God gave you that for a reason. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, and over a process of time, you become more secure in that unique design. As you see different people who are in the scriptures use those same gifts to make change and things like that, you become confident, a holy
Yeah.
confidence,
Yeah.
and that's something I feel like everyone should experience. Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely. And something key that you said too was that you found the right community of people who could affirm you and your giftings and not ostracize you for it or try to diminish what makes you you. Can you talk a little bit about how finding the right community actually
mm,
stabilized you in your identity?
oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, your circle is a stronghold, honestly. Like it is gonna let the right things in or keep the wrong or wait, keep the wrong things in or keep the right things out. Like if that's a negative thing for you. Or it could be the opposite. It could let the right things in and keep the wrong things out. So yeah, shifting my circle. And this is
Mhm.
not a knock to like any circle that I was in before, but I don't even know who quoted it. It might be anonymous, but like one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard was, "It's like a lack of happiness is the result of misaligned expectations," or something like that. It was
Mm.
like, oh no, the root of all unhappiness is misaligned expectations,
Mm.
and really it came from like me realigning my expectations.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh no, like it's not like I'm not a part of cutoff culture. Like
Yeah.
that's not, I don't want to do that. But now I have to realign you in my life,
Mhm.
because if I apply the wrong expectations to this relationship, there's going to be unhappiness in
Mhm.
there. Um, and then me finding new people who were aligned with certain areas that I was going was great as well, because now I was able to like bounce ideas off of people and be inspired by people and
Mhm.
see what's possible.
Mhm.
Lots of things like people just don't know what's possible for them. And to be quite honest with folks that are going to be watching this, I paid. I
Come on,
paid
invest in
money.
yourself.
Like I
Yeah,
need to find like a camera, blah, blah, blah. Put your money where your mouth is.
yeah.
That's where you'll get that. Now, of course, you could get it anywhere. God could bless you in any type of way.
Hmm.
But for networking, for me upgrading my circle to the place where I wanted it to be, like I paid to be in a lot of those
Yeah.
rooms, um,
And
and it was worth it.
yeah, yeah. And I didn't even say how we know each other. That's how we met.
That's
It's
how we
through
met. Exactly. Exactly.
it's through investing in ourselves to be a part of this amazing community by Dr. Darius. And you just the amount of possibilities that were open to me, I didn't even look at myself in any type of way. I was just like, I'm gonna be here to just get some strategies to apply to my business, and that's it. And I gained so much more. I grew in so many internal ways that I never expected.
Yeah.
And that included building relationships with people who saw things in me I couldn't see myself. And that's the power of community. They're able to observe you outside of you and see all the giftings that God has put in you. And the right community knows how to bring that out of you and encourage you in that,
Yeah.
which I think is so interesting how we started this conversation with the people you kind of had to let go, but it made room for the right people to come in place.
Yeah.
So, how many people who are watching this live are refusing to let go of people who are no longer moving in the same direction? And it's no knock to them, but how many people are you refusing to let go and they're taking the place of people who are going to push you forward? And my favorite one of my favorite scriptures is that the Lord puts two together to carry the load, to carry the burden. So relationships, especially friendships and things like that, they're supposed to be put together so that they can handle the weight of who you are, the weight of where you're going, the weight of who God created you to be. And if they're not able to, one, they're probably getting suffocated under the weight too. So it's actually beneficial for both ends to kind of separate in order for you to grow and for them to continue in the direction that they're going. And I think it's hard when we hear the like cancel or like cut off culture, but there is something to having the right people around you and not doing it in a vicious way, not doing it in a way that's like, oh, forget everything. But sometimes you do have to let those people go in order to have the right community in place. And I think you just highlighted that. You just highlighted how you were able to kind of stabilize in who you are because of being in the right community.
Yeah.
So I think next for me would be as you were building this new community, as you were investing in yourself, can you talk a little bit about why you chose to pay to be a part of certain groups or pay to be a part of certain communities?
Yeah. Um, so I did the free thing for a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. I would be up on like on meetup.com. This is how desperate I was. I'd be on
Come on, be
meetup.com like,
honest.
where are people that are doing some similar things? I would go to random, and this stuff is still beneficial. I'm still connected with these people to this day. All these different things. Like I would go to like random churches if they were doing like outreach ministry, just to meet people. Like, who are you? Like, I just saw the ad on Instagram. I don't know nobody here. But I was like really, really hungry for building new relationships, and relationships that were based on values, not proximity. Um, but the first kind of foray into like doing things like that, like paying to be a part of community or groups, was with, um, I was fresh out of school, and I actually didn't pay for this, which is kind of a funny part. It's a blessing, but I was fresh out of school and I had no job. And I had turned down an offer. So like I would have been like living in Florida doing like healthcare administration or whatever. I was like, I do not want to do that. I moved back home to DC with my parents. No job, no prospects. I'm sending out applications, everything's getting denied. So I was just like trying to do something. And somebody asked me, they knew I had like experience with like audio engineering and things like that. And they were doing an interview with the dean of the school, the master's school of business at Howard University. And I just tagged along, and the dean was there, and I was just, making sure stuff was set up and blah, blah, blah. And he asked me, he was like, "Hey, I have no idea what this man saw in me. I really don't. I need to hit him up on LinkedIn just to see how he's doing." But he was like, "Do you want to be a part of this cohort that we're having here for a coaching certification?" It was a coaching certification in DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I had no idea what that even meant. I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah,
Yep.
sure." And he was like, "Okay." He was like, "I'll send you an email. Just do this, blah, blah, blah." So I had nothing to do. So I show up for the cohort. And I mean, I was probably the youngest person in there by double, like, of anyone. And I didn't even understand. Okay, age is one thing. I'm used to kind of being the young person in the room in lots of spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But when people started to say who they were and what they did, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, this is like companies were flying these people in to get these certifications. And then I found out how much it cost. And it was 6 grand.
Jeez.
And I just got quiet. I was like, I hope they don't find out that I'm just, and but like I still have connections from that cohort. This was like in 2019. And that's when I was like, oh, there's a different quality of people that put their wallet where their vision is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started doing it, and
Mm-hmm.
for everything, I got in Everyday Seminary and
Mm-hmm.
Daniel's Bin and TCP and all these different. I'm throwing a whole bunch of different acronyms out there that people might not know, but these are all just programs, certification programs, personal development programs,
Yeah.
business development masterminds, like all these different things, values that I had.
Mm-hmm.
I will pay to get in the room with other people who also would pay to get in the room. If you're doing that, I know you're serious.
Right.
And these are not small amounts of money. Like, these are 4 figures, 5 figures that people are paying to do this. Did I have money? No, I was putting all my savings into this. So, like, it's really about like how bad do you want it for real?
Mm-hmm.
And 100% your net worth is your network.
Mm-hmm.
I, I, the people I have met, the it's just crazy. Like, the opportunities that I've been able to happen because of who you know.
Mm-hmm.
JP, good to see you. People like Joel, like I get to know him. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy, and I feel very, very, very wealthy relationally.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is one of the most important aspects of wealth that people overlook.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be, rich monetarily and poor relationally. Um, and that's the spot that I ever want to be in,
Yeah.
because you need people.
Absolutely.
You never know when time's coming.
No, it's so true. And I think living in an American Western society, it's like, oh, do it by yourself, pull yourself by your bootstraps. And it's like, no, we are an interdependent people. We need each other, because the way you're gifted is not the way I'm gifted. The way you see the world is not the way I see the world. And it's not that we're opposing, it's that we fill in the gaps where we may have blind spots. So everyone is necessary in all your unique gifting and all your ways in which you think about the world. We're all necessary. And you talked about joining communities based off of your values. So it wasn't that you were just investing in just a cool group. It was more so like these are people whose mindsets are moving in the same direction my mindset is moving. In the ways that I want to grow, I have to be in these type of rooms. I have to be in these type of environments where I can see possibilities outside of the environment I grew up in, or outside of the friendship that I had, or friendship groups that I've had. So I think I did the same thing. I invested in the communities. I invested in coaching because I knew there were mindset blocks that I just had just through trauma and just growing up in life. You think you know it all, especially in your 20s, in your late 20s, early 20s. You just think you know it all because maybe graduated from school, or you just feel like you've reached it. And it's like, no, you can learn so much from people older than you, further along in life than you, if you choose to make that investment. And
Yeah.
it really is, how badly do you want it?
Yeah.
How badly do you desire to develop? Because anything that's not growing is dead. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
So if you're stuck in the same position, you have to do something different. You have to do something outside of the norm in order to get a different result. And I think you just highlighted that so well there. And I want to go back to something that you said before, because I think it's so key. As we talk about community, I think it's also key to talk about points where we feel a little bit separated. So being separated for the calling, because there's this kind of duality where you start being in the right groups, you start being in the right communities, but there are still moments in time where you're kind of isolated or separated. Have you been through that experience, and what was so key about those separation moments for your
Yeah.
calling?
For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I feel like I'm still going through that right now, honestly. The first one, the first one I shared was like separating from being the guy that got along with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
the guy that, he played sports, he was in entertainment, he was in education, he was singing, he was playing instruments, he was doing everything. I had a whole bunch of little sub demographics of cliques, which is cool. I mean, I'm a type 5 on the Enneagram, like we do that kind of stuff, but like, um, going from that to kind of going hard at being a content creator. Um, and then removing myself from that and kind of like separating myself from a lot of relationships I built. I mean, I built a lot of network with that. That I still have those relationships to this day, but is different because of proximity. Um, to going into like the education, coaching space, online business space, and and all those places, I was never a perfect fit. I was a little bit too business and like education minded for the content creation side. But then I was a little bit too much entertainment for like business side. So I'm like, I don't where I fit. And one thing that I love about the internet, there's a lot of things I hate about the internet. But one thing that I do love about the internet is that you create the type of world you want to live in, basically. So therefore, you aren't subject to geographical area. You're not subject to your environment. You're not subject to your economic status.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has the same opportunity to attract whatever they're looking for in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So now I was like, okay, I think I need to lean into this authenticity of like who I am, because I know there's somebody else out there that's like doing the same thing. Like, man, there's nobody. Blah, blah, blah. And we just got to find each other, and then it's going to be a collaboration heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But just being okay with being that authentic. So, and you have to test things out. Like you have to experience those worlds. The grass is always greener.
Mm-hmm.
Even the dynamic of me being an employee to me being an entrepreneur. Like I thought entrepreneurship was the greatest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, being an employee ain't that bad. You know,
Ooh, scheduled
so
paycheck and everything.
you know what I'm saying? The grass is always, you're never going to be happy with everything. There's never going to be a perfect church. There's never going to be a perfect family. There's never going to be a perfect anything. But you can pick and choose what priorities are the most important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm kind of figuring that out with the whole separation thing and finding my lane.
Mm-hmm.
Where to live with what God has called me to do, because whatever I'm doing is going to resonate with the people who He's called me to serve.
Yeah,
But it's an ongoing process.
absolutely. And I think, especially for you, the fact that there is no lane, it doesn't exist, is because you're supposed to create it. And I
Mm.
think, ooh, this is going to go into a different direction. So I think there is a little bit of, no, a lot of bit of, what's the word for it? It's a lot of, the best word I have for it is tension right now. There's a lot of, it's a different type of challenge when you're the first to do something, when you're the first in your family to do something, or when you're the first to have this type of vision in this type of way. And you spoke about getting connected with people who are doing something similar, but when you still don't see yourself kind of aligning with what has already been done and you're creating the path yourself, I feel like there's a different type of challenge that comes with that. As you're explaining, you're still working it out, because what I've found is that, like, even when I find something that aligns, it's like, but I can do it a little differently. I could go about it a different way. So now I'm trying to create the new framework. I'm trying to create the new, with whatever vision the Lord has given me, I'm trying to strategize on how to build that out. And you spoke about control before.
Mm.
How does that, you kind of creating your own lane, how does that look as you're releasing control for the Lord to do whatever he wants to do? Because that's what's going to happen. But you have the vision. He's giving you the vision and you're creating it, but you don't have control over everything. How do you manage that
Right,
duality?
right, right. I mean, I think the verse of the day today on the U version that was, makes plans in his heart, but the Lord's purpose will prevail.
Yeah.
Ah, man, that's so true. It's so true. I have the privilege of right now working with really closely with Dr. Mark Batterson, who, I mean, he's written like a million books, but like everything he says is like quotable, honestly. And one of the things he says like all the time is we're going to work like it's up to us and pray like it's up to God.
That's so
And
good.
everything he says, I'm like, oh, write that down. But and that's kind of like where I am. It's you kind of fluctuate. You kind of like human beings. I always say this about like my mom or girlfriend. Like they have, in the car when it comes to the thermostat, they have no type of like it seems median. It's like, oh, I'm hot. Turn the AC all the way on. Oh, I'm cold. Turn the heat all the way up. I'm like, let's just be a little mild about it. But we as humans like do that in life. Like we see with different generations, oh, my parents did this, I'm not going to do any of that or whatever, or even in politics, like this side is saying this, we're going to go the complete opposite of that. And it is really like I went through that process of work, work, work. Like you got to make this work to God's, like I'm not doing nothing. Like it's in God's hands. Whatever, Lord Jesus, take the wheel. And like Jesus had a plan. Like he would say, no, we're not going to this city. We're going to actually. I forgot exactly what even city. It's in Scripture where it
was like
skipped over this city.
Asia. Yeah, a lot of Asia they didn't touch.
Oh, actually, that was Paul. Never mind. That was Paul that actually happened too.
Yeah.
But like, Jesus as well, through his trip through Galilee and going to Decapolis or Capernaum or whatever it is, he was going on a ministry tour. He had a treasurer. Like there were different plans that he had, and even the plan of salvation itself. There started all the way in Genesis chapter 3, right? And now we're here thousands and thousands of years later in the life of Jesus. He's like, Lord, if you could take this cup from me,
Please.
we could work something out. I mean, that really, really shows. I mean, Paul talks about how he is our high priest because he was fully human. And that's one of those moments where you can see the humanity of Christ, born of a virgin woman, human, but
Mm-hmm.
still fully God from the seed of the Holy Spirit. So it's like if he struggled with that,
Yeah.
but was able to overcome it by submitting and yielding to the will of God, I
Mm-hmm.
have that same power because he gave me the Holy Spirit when he ascended. So like it's tough, because sometimes you just want to give it all up and you're like, you know what, Lord, just do whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily the way to go about things. And also you got to realize that you like when God dragged Job for like 13 chapters in the book of Job, is like, did you do this? Did you control that? I
Is
was
you
like, yo,
through any of this?
you are really going hard right now. Like, I don't know if he deserves this, God, but you know everything, so I'm not gonna say. Uh, it's finding that middle ground. And I think like this is why reading the word is so important because you constantly have to abide in him. Like it has to be a part of you because you're constantly getting fed information from advertisements, social media, television, music, like all these different things, pop culture that are feeding your psyche. And if you don't have anything to filter that through,
Mm-hmm.
you're screwed. Like honestly, this world will have you going down, like just down. Wherever that means for you, that's where it is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and finding that peace, that balance, and like God, I'm gonna work toward the vision that you gave me.
Mm-hmm.
But also I know that is yours. Like you put the breath in my body, you gave me the vision. You even if it's not necessarily like divinely implanted, like there's like multiple types of visionaries. You have like a Moses type of visionary who is like a burning bush. This is what you need to do. I'm calling you into this thing. Or you could have a Nehemiah where it's just like my heart is just
Mm-hmm.
prompted to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't an angel, it wasn't a burning bush, it wasn't any of that. And all in between that spectrum.
Yeah.
I don't even know what we talk about anymore. I started with.
We're talking about navigating that space where you're
Oh,
being obedient,
yeah.
but you also realize that you're not in control. And what you said is you said two key things. You said one, understanding, first of all, that walking in your calling is a faith journey. It is faith. It's you choosing to obey what the Lord has said to you, about you, and taking it one step at a time. You don't have to know the whole picture in order to be obedient. You just have to say yes to the things that he's already said to you. So a lot of walking walking in your calling is taking it one day at a
Yeah.
time. Is taking it one step at a time. You do not have to conquer the world today. You conquer the world in bits and pieces. You obey one day at a time. You say yes, and then you keep saying yes, and you keep saying yes. And even when the world is trying to convince you to do something else, you said something else about leaning on the word, which is truth. So it's walking in faith and standing on truth.
Yes.
And as you're doing that in tandem, you're able to stay focused on the call. You're able to stay focused on the vision because you're rooted in the word, you're rooted in truth, you're rooted in Christ. And because you're rooted in him, you know he's got your back. Everything that you need is in him so
Mm-hmm.
that you can take those faith steps. So it's like I can take this step of faith because I know who God is. I know that he's with me and I know that I have everything I need in him. So of course I can take this step that he's telling me to take because he desires for me to have hope and a future. So it's like because I'm rooted in the truth, I can actually walk freer and in peace and in rest and in joy, knowing that I have everything that I need as I'm taking these steps that I don't know where I'm going really, but I know I'm following him.
Yeah.
I know I'm following Christ and he is the only way to freedom. So it's like as you're doing that in tandem in your calling, you're able to walk with a sense of confidence and with a sense of freedom that I think is what a lot of entrepreneurs or just people walking in different professions, when they're searching for that satisfaction, they're really searching for Christ. They're really
Yeah.
searching for what he has said about them and what he has called them to do. So I think it's so key, as you said, like walking in faith, taking it one step at a time and standing on truth. And I think that's so key when you're walking in your calling.
100%. I did like a whole, I think I did a blog article and a podcast episode about faith. And
Mm-hmm.
um, like a big thing I was seeing, I was like, I see a lot of visionaries forfeiting a step of faith to take a leap of faith. And it's like, you don't have to jump off a cliff
You
to
don't.
exercise faith. And I'm not saying that those leaps aren't, you know, done and God ordained in some situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk about this thing called the faith block or the faith cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it starts with belief, right? That's really what faith is. It's
Mm-hmm.
belief in a certain outcome, whether positive or negative. You got negative faith too,
Mm-hmm.
and then that belief influences how you feel. And I know sometimes, like maybe in churchianity or just in the personal growth space, we kind of can push emotions or feelings, like, you know, it's not about how you feel, it's about, you know, the goodness of God, or it's about how bad do you want this, or whatever it is, like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're basically telling people not to be human beings.
Right.
Like, emotions and feelings are a core part of the human experience,
Yeah.
and that's literally how we make decisions. So a belief leads to a feeling leads to behavior. Your behavior impacts your results,
Mm-hmm.
and your results reinforce your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's by taking that step, just that little step of faith, it makes you feel a certain way. And that feeling of anticipation, instead of, you know, dread or fear or anxiety, anticipation instead of anxiety, will have a feeling that because you feel that way, you'll start to behave differently. And when you behave differently, you get different results. And those results, which we might call a testimony or a miracle or whatever it is, reinforces the initial belief. And you can build these blocks over time rather than saying, I got to build a house.
Right.
Now, of course, you could build a house, you could, but for most people, they're forfeiting the step of faith for the leap of faith. And I just think that's so important for visionaries to hear, because it takes so much faith to do it.
I think that's so good because I think when we hear the testimonials and the testimonies, as you're saying, I used to always say, I don't know if God's really, when I was younger, I don't know if God's really working in my life the way he's working in other people's life, because
Right.
you always heard the grand testimony. I was on this, the Lord snatched me up, and it was just like, wow, I guess the Lord doesn't move in my life because
Yeah.
it's not this grand pivot. But no, the fact that I'm in my right mind today is a blessing.
Right.
The fact that I didn't get hurt, or, I woke up today, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Like, it's in the small steps that we're able to really see our faith mature, as you say, and we see it grow. And we don't have to feed into kind of like the social media culture of the big
Yeah.
grand testimony.
Like, I
Like,
was gang
how
banging and shooting people in the face, and
and it's like,
Jesus,
ooh, what if I'm
it's
not
like, that's not my story,
that's
brother.
not my
I'm
story?
sorry. One thing, David Shan, I don't know if you know who David Shands is. He hosts the Social Proof podcast, but
Oh,
he said something that it was so funny to me, but it was so real.
mm-hmm.
And he was like, I used to think I couldn't be successful because I had an average life.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, word, like he was like, yeah, like I wasn't, like I had two parents in my home. You know, we weren't we weren't doing that great, but we weren't like struggling, you know, like
Mhm.
we were okay. So he was like, I didn't come into wealth. I didn't have any pedigree. I didn't have anything like that. And I wasn't getting it out the mud. So therefore, from all the stories I would see of all the people that were successful, I thought I couldn't be successful because that wasn't my story.
Mhm.
And he was like, well, now I see that that's not true.
Yeah.
But I feel like that happens in so many different spaces, whether that's sports, whether that's education, whether that's
Mhm.
faith, whether that's professional business, whatever it is.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I don't have a story like that, so I guess I'm not, whatever. And it's like,
Mhm.
mm,
That's
God's working through every little thing.
everything. Everything. And you said it before, someone's called to your story. Not everyone has the
Yeah, I was
okay, I've got out
called
the
to
mud.
Sharon's story. I was called to Sharon's story. I mean, that resonated with me on such a deep level. I was like,
Absolutely.
that's how I feel, bro.
Yes. Exactly. And it's like, don't ever think your story isn't necessary. I
Mm,
guess this is the theme of the podcast of today's live. Don't ever think you're not necessary or your story's not necessary because you don't know who you're actually making the wave for. You don't know if Cleavon is listening to you
hmm
talk about, oh yeah, I was a two-family house, and you don't know who's listening. You don't know who's getting set free by your obedience and you choosing to say yes to what you've been called to do. And don't ever minimize that because that person affects 10 people, and that those 10 people affect 100 people. So it's even on the smaller magnitudes, it's even in the smaller spaces that you really do change the world, you really do make that impact. And it's just by having the confidence and knowing that your story is necessary and who you are is necessary, and not being afraid to do and to be everything that you've been called to be.
yeah,
And I think that's
yeah.
that's the key point. Okay, Clee, I feel like I've had you on here for a while. This has been an amazing conversation. um I usually ask this last question for everyone who's been in this conversation. For someone who is on the fence of walking in their calling, if they're still hesitant of whether or not to say yes, whether or not to take that first step, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Uh, I'm gonna be that guy. I'm sorry, but honestly,
Be that
it
guy.
would, it would really
Okay.
depend. It would depend on why they are hesitant about doing it. Like, what's the source of the trepidation of moving forward? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could be external, sometimes it could be internal,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could be based on a limiting belief, sometimes it could be based on facts. So, like, I would ask, like,
Mm-hmm.
what
What was
what is making you feel like this is something that you don't want to do, or whatever it is? That would be my first question. I don't know what you do with that answer, but I could get to a better answer if I knew the answer to that question.
No, I think that's actually a great answer because a lot of what can be driving people's decisions are fears. So they're not choosing to make that next step because of whatever other people internally, whatever limiting beliefs that they may have. So even taking the step of doing the self-reflection, why am I fearful? Even the person who's fearful, asking yourself that, or who doesn't want to take that next step. Why? What's stopping me? What's preventing me from taking this step of faith? What's preventing me from seeing myself in this light? And once you get to the root of that, you're able to see whether or not it's being driven by a truth or it's being driven by lies.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually very helpful because it's an action step. It's like, what is preventing me? And now I can get to the root of it before I choose to walk in my calling. And if it's based off of a lie, if it's based off of people saying like, you were never really fit for this, or I can't really see you doing this, or you telling yourself that, like, oh, I'm not qualified for this. I'm not skilled enough for it. Is the Lord just asking you to say yes? And as you say yes, you build the skills. As you say yes, you build the necessary muscle that's necessary to carry your call. Um, and as you're doing all that self-reflection, see what it is that's stopping you. And I think that's a really good answer to the question. I think it's very prophetic of you to ask that question.
No, that's really it's my favorite question. I remember when I got my first coaching certification. What they trained us to do, because really you're become an expert at asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And they told us to never use the word why. And they're like, when
Mm-hmm.
you use the word why when addressing someone, it makes them feel like they have to come up with a good answer,
Mm-hmm.
and it could put them into defense mode.
Mm.
So I got so good at asking the question why without saying
Big why.
why. I'm like, well, what made you say that? Or what prompted that response? You know, like, or whatever. I'm really just saying
Yeah.
why, but like asking that question to yourself over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. Well, what makes you say that? Well, because blah, blah, blah. Well, what makes you say that? Because blah, blah, blah. What makes you say that? And you kind of get back, like peeling back these layers, and you can get to the root of like, oh, this is why I'm behaving in this way because I'm feeling this because I have belief about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this has been great.
But amazing answer. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. First, as we're ending this conversation, I want to thank you so much for you saying yes. No matter how difficult your yeses have been, no matter how tough it has been to choosing to say yes day in and day out. Thank you, because I have been directly impacted by your yes. So I want to give you your flowers here of
I appreciate it.
absolutely keep going because you're absolutely necessary and you are a visionary who has been crafted and created to create more visionaries. You are the tree who's planting other trees. And I don't think you really know all that you are, which is I think necessary to for us all to remain humble. We're never going to fully grasp all that we are, but I just want to encourage you to keep going, no matter how difficult it gets, no matter what roadblocks you face. Absolutely keep saying yes because people like me have been impacted, and I want to thank you for that.
Wow, that was a compliment right there. That was 5 stars. Uh, well, thank you, Diane. And I've had the privilege, we kind of talked about how we cross paths
Mm-hmm.
of seeing your metamorphosis like firsthand. Because I
Mm-hmm.
remember the conversations we were having in the
Yeah.
beginning, and to see where you are now and the difference you're making now. I mean, you were making the difference where you were before, but just how you have embraced this new season for your life has been absolutely a pleasure and very inspiring for me to see. And I could tell that you were doing the right thing because I could see the glow of like even when I'm talking about stuff like this, like I could talk like stuff about stuff like this forever because it's what gets me energized. I'm tired. I told you how sore I am, but
Yeah.
like I don't feel anything right now. And I could see the same thing with you with what you're doing. So thank you for bringing me to your platform, your stage. And I just want to encourage you to keep on keeping on because I'm probably going to do a series on this on the pod, but like the devil don't be happy when you start walking in your calling.
That's a whole separate
Oh
conversation.
my gosh.
Woo! Yeah.
So I'll be praying for you as well, but I just want to encourage you, like, keep going. It's going to be obstacles, but I'm really, really am inspired because I'm like witnessing this. I'm like, this is incredible.
Well, way to return the 5-star compliment. Thank you so no, but thank you so much. And it's true. It's a lot of obstacles that come in place, but I'm committed to this because I have a bigger why. I know why I'm doing this. And I can tell you have the same understanding of your purpose. And as you're getting more discovery on that, it's like it's that much more motivation to keep going. So I appreciate your kind words. And I receive it. Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this. I guess it's an episode of
Yes,
the
it's a series.
yeah of the Confrontation of Calling, the conversation. I will see you guys next week.
All right.
Peace.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you.